Remember R.I.P.D. Released in 2013, the comic book adaptation starring Ryan Reynolds and Jeff Bridges was a box office failure for Universal Pictures. But it looks like Universal is ready to head back into the Rest in Peace department nearly 10 years later. A mysterious new project titled R.I.P.D. 2, Rise of the Damned, to our surprise, has just made its presence known. Boston police detectives Nick Walker and Bobby Hayes steal gold during a drug bust. Nick regrets the theft and tells Hayes that he will turn it in as evidence. Hayes shoots and kills Nick at the next drug bust. Time stops around Nick and he is drawn into a vortex, depositing him in an office. Nick meets Mildred Proctor, who explains that he is dead and was headed to judgment. She recruits him into the R.I.P.D., whose job is to find and capture deados, the souls of people who died but escaped judgment. Nick is partnered with Roycephus Roy Pulsifer, a lawman from the Old West. Roy takes Nick to watch his own funeral and Nick talks to his wife Julia, but she does not recognize him. Roy explains that the R.I.P.D. officers have their appearance changed and are blocked from revealing their true identities. Nick now appears as an elderly Asian man while Roy appears to be a beautiful blonde woman. Roy takes Nick to question a suspected deado named Stanley. They ask Stanley questions until he pops and is exposed as a deado. Stanley tries to escape and throws up a bunch of gold he swallowed before being shot by Roy. Roy and Nick argue and Nick throws Roy in front of a bus, causing Roy to lose his cowboy hat. Nick and Roy return to headquarters and book the gold as evidence. Nick wants to investigate the gold further and asks Roy to take him to an informant. Roy takes Nick to meet a deado named Elliot, who claims the gold is junk. Nick leaves the gold with Elliot and watches as he gives it to Nick's old partner Hayes. Roy and Nick tail Hayes to Nick's house and watch him dig up Nick's gold before following Hayes to the airport. Hayes gives the gold to a deado who gets stopped by Roy and Nick while leaving. The deado refuses to talk and instead pops himself, becoming a hulking monster. It leads Nick and Roy on a public chase that ends with Nick getting the gold but the deado escaping. Nick and Roy return to headquarters and book the gold before being taken to Eternal Affairs to be punished for the deado escaping. They learn the gold is part of an artifact called the Staff of Jericho, which can reverse the tunnel to the afterlife. Nick and Roy are also suspended from duty pending a hearing. Nick leaves and tries to reveal himself to Julia, but she runs away from him. Roy and Nick argue again but make up after Nick apologizes. They decide to track down the rest of the gold despite their suspensions. They confront Hayes at home and he reveals he's a deado. They arrest him and seize the rest of the gold. At headquarters, Hayes triggers a device that freezes R.I.P.D. officers while the deados steal the gold back and escape. The deados block off the streets and begin assembling the Staff of Jericho on the roof of a building. Nick and Roy fight their way to the building as Hayes fatally wounds Julia to use her blood to power the staff. The dead begin to rain down on Earth as Nick distracts Hayes and Roy destroys the staff. The vortex closes and Nick shoots Hayes in the head, erasing him. Time stops around Julia as she dies and sees Nick's true self. They share a passionate goodbye and Nick tells her to move on with her life without him. Julia wakes up in the hospital where Proctor, who appears as a doctor, checks on her. Proctor tells Nick that Julia will be fine and that he owes her a favor. Proctor tells Nick and Roy that Eternal Affairs had their hearings without them. Nick is given a warning while Roy has 53 more years added to his service. Proctor takes Roy aside and returns his cowboy hat as they share a tender moment and make up. Roy gives Nick a new identity and Nick is excited until he sees that he now appears as a Girl Scout with orthodontic headgear on. Stay tuned to AR-FilmyLove3D for more. Thanks for watching my video. Please like, comment, support, and subscribe my YouTube channel.